Hi everyone. My name is Martin Petkov, and I'm a senior member of technical staff at VMware. And today I'll do the presentation on how to rewrite service from the ground up and what our experiences were. Today on the agenda, we will first talk about the product itself, which is VMware Area Automation. Then we'll go through the service that we rewrote, called XaaS, short for anything as a service. Then we'll go over the decision of why we had to build a new product from scratch, how we approached rewriting our service specifically, the lessons we learned, and at the end we'll have some time for a Q&A session. But before we continue to the interesting parts, let me tell you a bit about myself. I was born and raised in Yambol, Bulgaria. It's a medium-sized town. I studied in the math high school, Tanas Radev, with a focus on math and programming. Actually, my first classes in programming were in the 8th grades. They were entirely writing algorithmic programs in block diagrams, which was not interesting. And at that point, I had decided I won't look at programming as anything more than a school subject. But in the 9th grade, the teacher changed and we started writing code as well. And she really, my teacher really inspired me to think about programming as something that I'd like to pursue higher education in. The year after that, I got a scholarship from an organization called Hilal Stipendi, which really gave me a boost of confidence. And I think at that point, I had decided I wanted to study programming and have a career in software development. Then in 2013, I got into the Sofia University to study computer science. And later in 2015, I became an intern here at VMware and started as a full-time employee the next year. And by then I was working on the product was called vRealize Automation. It was version 7.1. And I started working on the new version of the product called VMware Area Automation in 2019. But what is VMware Area Automation? As you can see in the past, we had a rebrand a week or two ago. And the product used to be called vRealize Automation, and I may use this interchangeably during this presentation. Yeah, because I don't want to bore you with some high-level definitions, I wanted to show you an example of what you can do. At its core, it's a cloud automation platform where you can define templates, which will define your infrastructure and your workloads. As you can see here, you can decide whether you want to define your infrastructure using code or using the UI. You can specify different parameters like the amount of RAM a user can request, let's say this WordPress deployment with, and so on. After you define this, you can, let's say, listen for different events in the provisioning lifecycle. For instance, let's say after the WordPress machine gets provisioned, you might want to send a Snap message, and you can do that by subscribing to listen to such an event. You can also have very strict control over which users have access to which templates, which is very important, as you may imagine. And at the end, once you provision your workloads, you will have a nice little details page where you can see the details about the deployment, its current state, what it consists of. But also as a user, you can decide to do day two operations over one or more of the resources of the deployment, which allow you to kind of have additional capabilities even after you've provisioned the cloud template. So what is the XaaS service? What's the problem we are solving? As I showed you in one of the previous screenshots, we have lots of resource types. There are also several cloud providers, and they also have very, very different and customized solutions. So it's not possible for us to support all of them out of the box, at the very least, because not all of them are very commonly used. So the problem we have is that we have many cloud providers with many solutions. On the other hand, we have customers who have written their own custom solutions. And we even have customers with pre-existing solutions. Let's say they have some Python scripts they've written in the past, and then they decide they want to use VMware RA automation. And they want to continue using that existing code alongside VMware RA automation. So this is the problem we have. And this XaaS service, or anything as a service, provides a solution to it. We solve this problem in two main ways. The first is allowing our customers to create their own custom resource types. As I said, not all of the types provided by all of the cloud providers cover common use cases. So we allow our clients to write their own custom solutions. And we also allow the creation of custom data operations for built-in resource types and custom resource types. This allows customers to extend the lifecycle of deployments by providing one-click or almost one-click operations to end users. We allow our customers to do this by writing their own custom code. They can do so either in vRealize orchestrator, which is an orchestrator engine used in VMware RA automation. And in there, you can use JavaScript, Python, Node.js, or PowerCLI. And we even allow our clients to use serverless functions, which they can also write. They can execute them in the cloud or on-premise with our VMware solution. And those can also be written in Node.js, PowerShell, or Python. And the added benefits of the XaaS service is that customers also have direct control over every part of the lifecycle because they get to write the provisioning code itself. They control every aspect of how the resource gets provisioned, how it gets created, how it gets recollected, and so on. Also, as a quick overview, I mentioned that we have cloud templates, as you saw in one of the previous screenshots, where you can either drag and drop resources or write code to add them to the cloud template. The resources there are provided by different services, microservices within the product. So, for instance, we have something called the provisioning service, which gives access to our users to virtual machines, networks, and other specific public cloud types. We also have our SaltStack and Terraform solutions, which provide configuration options and other well-known types. And the downside of this is that they require code change anytime the cloud provider changes the type. So let's say AWS adds a new parameter to their virtual machine creation API. We have to make a code change in order for that parameter to show up in VRA. And that's something that might work for the very big types, the ones that are used, like virtual machines, but it's not sustainable for us to support all of the types provided by all of the providers. So what we do is we have our XaaS service, and it acts as a kind of a proxy for serverless functions or for the vRealize orchestrator workflows, which customers write. The plus here is that once the customer writes their own scripts, they can immediately run it. They don't have to do anything and anything else, anything in addition, and they can start provisioning their custom types almost immediately. But before we talk more about the service, I want to quickly cover why we decided to build a new product from scratch. As you may or may not know, there is a big difference between vRealize Automation 7 and VMware ARIA Automation. And the main reason there's such a big difference is that we wanted to embrace the cloud. The industry was moving in a different direction than what vRealize Automation 7X provided, and we wanted to move on with it. So we wanted to build a product which is cloud first, as you will see in this comparison. So how did the two products compare? So how did they compare, and let's see how that played into this decision to kind of rewrite the whole product. For instance, we had a kind of big stack. It was a little bit bloated. As you can see, we used 3 different front-end frameworks alongside 2 different backend languages, which were C# and Java, which also meant that we had one Linux machine on which we deployed WAR files, and we also had a Windows Server machine on which we deployed the C# code. And one of the big downsides of this was that we also could only deploy on-premise. As a bonus, the upgrade process was kind of cumbersome, and we were developing this product in a monolithic repository, which also had some downsides, which I'll talk a bit about later. And we tried to fix all of these things in vRealize Automation 8X or VMware ARIA Automation. The technology stack got a lot leaner. The front end is now entirely written in Angular, and the backend is entirely in Java. We went along with the microservices architecture, and this product was written for the cloud first. And then we found out how we can provide this as a packaged solution to clients who want to have a private cloud. And also the upgrade process was faster, and every microservice being in its own repository had some advantages, and I'll go over these as well a bit later. So how did we approach rewriting this XaaS service, which allowed clients to extend their product? So we had several goals. We wanted the whole process to be more streamlined. At the time vRealize Automation 7 was created, wizard style UX was kind of popular. So we had a lot of next buttons and many different screens in which you had to enter different information. So that had to go. The other thing was that we wanted to support we had to support many concurrent users, because from our data about vRealize Automation 7, we saw that the XaaS service was one of the services which got most of or a lot of the traffic that's going through the product. I think it was like the second most used service. So when you bring that to the cloud, you have to be sure that you can handle a lot of users. vRealize Automation 7 also had a quirk where you could only have one endpoint in any given organization. So let's say you have an organization of developers, they could only execute it on one specific vRealize orchestrator, and that was it. That was a constraint that was limiting our customers and how they can implement their use cases. The last thing we wanted to add was that we wanted to give users more fine-grained control over the access. We had a different model for provisioning in VMware Automation. So we had to adapt to it, and while adapting to it, we wanted to find a way to make sure that administrators have very direct control over who gets to see what. We also had several considerations. As I already kind of mentioned, we had to make sure that this service, when it's rewritten, will work as well for clients who deploy their product on-premise as for those that use it in the cloud. It was a challenge for us also to add the multiple execution endpoints, which I just talked about. But we also wanted to write the service in a more abstract way to make sure that we could extend it in the future. As I said, in vRealize Automation 7, you could only execute your custom logic in vRealize Orchestrator. But in the new version of the product, you can also use serverless functions, as I mentioned a few slides ago. And when we started writing the product, we had to iteratively discuss with customers what they wanted to see next. There wasn't really a clear execution plan on what we should do, as we were constantly going back and forth with our customers, where we would show them progress, and they would determine what use cases they now have covered and what use cases they would like to see covered next. First, I guess I want to talk about the lessons we learned as a broad team from rewriting the whole product, from rewriting vRealize Automation 7. There were good things, of course, one of which was the fact that we were in the cloud. As I mentioned, the product was developed for the cloud first. That was our main goal. And that also opened the path for other benefits, which we had. What we gained across the whole product was that we had a much leaner technology stack, going from having a Linux virtual machine as well as a Windows server to having several microservices written entirely in Java, and the front end written entirely in Angular was great for us, which also led to a quicker development process. There weren't many hurdles anymore when you would when you would contribute to another service. Also, not trying to integrate several different technologies together is generally a bit easier, of course. By using also the microservices architecture and alongside Kubernetes, we were able to scale better. Instead of just adding more virtual machines which run the same code, we could now take advantage of Kubernetes features, and we can, of course, scale the services which are used the most, or we could determine a much better share for CPU and memory for each service, so that we optimize a machine's resources to its maximum potential. As a developer, one of the things that I really like about having the product in the cloud is instant access to the logs. Now, when the customer has an issue, we can just instantly pop in our in our cloud where we can start taking a look at the logs. We have a product called VMware Login Site, so vRealize, login site, where you can do many different advanced queries and analysis on logs, and having that accessible instantly was a really big plus for us as developers, opposed to having clients gather log bundles from their machines, then send those log bundles to our support staff, who then relays to us. This really led to a quicker turnaround time when we are working on customer issues. We also have easy access to metrics. Now we know exactly how much different services are used and which services are used the most. We know which parts of a service are popular, which are not used as much. We can determine, for instance, the size of a cloud template, of the average cloud template, and based on that information, we also take different decisions about the development of the product. Since we know what the average customer use case is, and we can try to adapt to it. Overall, having access to the metrics of the product in the cloud has sped up the process of deciding whether a feature should be prioritized or not. I guess the last really important thing for us was having real-time analytics dashboards. We could constantly monitor both manually and automatically the performance of the product. And so we could take different decisions based on what we see. For instance, we didn't need to wait for a service to have 95% memory usage to start doing something. We could set up alerts, which would send us emails when it was over 70%, let's say. We could try to see if there was anything wrong, or whether that was just a lot of users being concurrently online at the same time, opposed to having this product deployed in the customer's private data center. It meant that we could take preemptive measures when we felt like something could go wrong. So of course, that also means that customers would have less downtime. They wouldn't have to experience the server crashing and then filing APR, which we would have to take a look at. We could preemptively make sure that the product was working smoothly. But of course, we also got some negative things, I guess. As a developer, one of the things was that customers expect issues to be fixed much faster. I guess mostly because we contractually agreed that we will have a certain percentage of uptime each month. Even though we have better tools in the cloud and we have instant access to all of the data, the metrics, the performance stats, and so on, it's still, I guess, it's not that easy to adapt from working kind of asynchronously for clients who deployed this product only on their data centers to working in real time when customers are expecting this to be fixed immediately, always. I guess it also took us some time to learn how to track performance issues, even though we had all of the tools. We had to learn how to use them. We had to hit a few issues, a few walls before we were able to learn how the product was used and how to use our tools to our advantage to make sure that customers weren't using the product so much that they could degrade the performance for everyone else. I guess the microservices architecture also has some downsides. We were kind of used to working in a one big monolithic repository where all of the services would reside. And every time you committed some code, all of the tests for the services would be run, which can be kind of redundant, but it also made sure that all of the services cooperated with one another, and when you submitted a piece of code, that wouldn't break another service. And it also took us some time, I guess, to learn how to introduce backwards incompatible changes, because we had several instances where a change in one service would break other services because the service A didn't have the tests which were related to the service B's way of using service A, and so on. And yeah, as I said, working on a monolithic project did have its advantages. Even though it was a bit slower, it did guarantee us that anytime we committed code, we weren't breaking interoperability between different services. Starting with the new version of the product, VMware Area Automation, we decided that we were going to guarantee backwards compatibility for all of our APIs. So both our cloud offering and our on-prem products have public APIs, which can be used by clients to implement their use cases using scripts, for instance, or using even their own UI. And this also was something which we weren't used to. So it was a bit, I guess, high maintenance for us to support many different versions of any given API at any time. Between the two versions of the products, vRealize Automation 7 and VMware Area Automation 8, we had great, like big architectural changes. The model for provisioning, for placement, for granting access to users to certain content and so on wasn't entirely backwards compatible. So what that meant was that for our customers, especially those that have very, very complex use cases, they wouldn't all be able to be upgraded or migrated automatically. There would be some manual steps they would have to perform. For some, it would be just validation that the automated suggestion is valid, but for some, it was a bit harder. But overall, I guess, moving to this new model, this new architecture was a big plus for us. And I think customers are overall more happy with how the product currently works. Also, as a team, I guess we had a few things we learned that were more specific to us. The leaner, of course, the leaner technology stack was easier to develop for. As you see, the XaaS service kind of acts as a proxy between other services. We communicate with a lot of external services. So having everything on a level playing field made everything easier for us. That was kind of a plus for us. Of course, it was great that new features and bug fixes could get to customers much faster in the cloud. If we are such a service that if we have a bug, customers couldn't really easily proceed to implement their use cases. If, for instance, you couldn't create your own custom resource type, or if the logic that was being executed couldn't be properly executed, for instance, that could bring the customer's implementation to a halt. So we have had, I guess, our fair share of important fixes, let's call them, which customers expected as fast as possible so that they could continue using the product. And now that we were in the cloud, it meant that customers didn't have to wait so much if there were any big issues, and they could continue with implementing their use cases. I guess we were also able to provide our customers with more flexibility. As I mentioned, we had restricted our clients to using only one endpoint in the old version, vRealize Automation 7x. And that meant that there was no choice for clients where things could be executed. But now that we were in the cloud, we decided that we should, our motto should be to always allow our clients to decide where their workloads or part of their workloads get run. And we were able to achieve that. It was a bit hard, I guess, because there were, we had to guarantee that everything could get run on a place that had access to the customer's systems. But yeah, I guess we were able to solve that. Yeah, as I also mentioned, with the technology stack, this new architecture kind of resulted in faster user experience, like from the creation itself, from not having to go through 5 pages of entering data or writing your own custom codes, or setting constraints on specific input fields. Now customers could do that much faster, but also to the provisioning itself. In the past, we have had complaints that customers feel that we could, the products and the XaaS service specifically could be a bit faster, a bit snappier. And thanks to the new architecture, we were able to achieve that. And customers were very happy with that. But of course, again, we also had some parts which weren't that pleasant for us. In the beginning, when we were rewriting the XaaS service, the team was kind of split between supporting the old version, vRealize Automation 7, and implementing and working on VMware area automation. That was a kind of a challenge for us, because it meant if there were many customer issues in vRealize Automation 7, then we couldn't dedicate that many people on the new version of the product, which by that point we had decided was the future. We decided that we were going to release at a certain date. So it was a hard balance to achieve between supporting our existing customers who are paying our wages currently and writing a new and better product, which would guarantee that there would continue to be customers on a VMware Cloud Automation platform. We also spent some time working on the wrong features. I remember the first feature I worked on. It was called Dynamic Value Definition, for short DVD. It was something that we knew the customers wanted, So we had started working on it right away. But as I mentioned earlier, we had kind of constant back and forth with our clients. So every 2 or 3 days, we would get feedback from some of our existing clients on what they want to see, how happy they are with our progress from the beta program we gave them. So our priorities were constantly shifting, and we would kind of try to predict what customers would want next. And we had 1 or 2 times where we weren't able to do that. But of course, having the team split between the 2 versions and not being able to dedicate all of the people kind of led us to that situation. So it all turned out well in the end, because we were able to implement the core customer features, and they were happy with the end result. I guess for me personally, also writing features for both the cloud and on-premise customers in mind was a bit harder, because on one side we had to think about tens of thousands of people using as one feature concurrently, and on the other we wanted to provide a smooth experience only for even our bigger on-premise clients don't have and can't compare to a public offering of a product. The team was used on working only on on-premise products, and so we didn't have much experience with writing for the cloud. So we had to kind of alter our way of thinking about how we write our features and make sure that we don't overload the system with too many calculations performed in the backend. Another kind of I guess interesting tidbits was the fact that even though the design of vRealize Automation 7 was a bit outdated, a lot of customers had grown accustomed to it. They would miss the wizard style when creating their custom resource types. They would complain that they felt that they didn't get as many features as they did on 7X, which was both true up to a point when we were still implementing them, but they also took some time to grasp how the new version of this XaaS service worked. So that was a minus for us. And we had to also spend some time with our clients to explain how their use cases would be implemented in the new version of the product, because it, as I said in a previous slide, it wasn't always a one-to-one mapping. Some cases had to be manually tweaked. Their architecture had to be kind of modified to make sure that they could run in the cloud, I guess. So yeah, before we go on to questions, I kind of wanted to talk about how did vRealize Automation come to be? How did this product come to this world? Yeah, I guess in a typical corporate fashion, it was the result of acquisitions and some internal efforts to make these acquisitions interoperable. I think more importantly, in 2012, VMware acquired a company called DynamicOps. DynamicOps was a cloud automation product, but more importantly, it led the provisioning side of things very well. As you can see, this was the Windows Server part of vRealize Automation up to version 7X. And it was commonly referred to as the IaaS machine, or infrastructure as a service. It was at the core, I guess, of the product, but since it was on a different stack, which we decided we weren't going to pursue in the future, it's no longer part of the new version of the product or VMware ARIA automation. But the know-how we got from it, the stuff we learned while developing that as well and supporting it, really, I think, prepared us very well as a team when the time came to rewrite vRealize automation. Another important acquisition was in 2007 when VMware acquired Dunes Technologies. This was a Swiss company which worked on an orchestrator. They called it VSO, or the Virtual Services Orchestrator. This is now known as vRealize Orchestrator. I mentioned it a couple of times during this presentation. It's still very important. It's still in active development. It was part of vRealize automation up to 7.6. and is now part of VMware ARIA automation, which is version 8 and on. And traditionally, the XaaS service has relied very heavily on it because we use the orchestrator as an execution environment for customer code. So customers would write their JavaScript, their Python, whatever. They would add it to the orchestrator, and we would then run this code when customers would provision specific custom resource types. What's interesting, I guess, about this product is also that it wasn't always in VMware ARIA automation. It was in different parts at VMware. Some of you may know vSphere. It used to be the orchestrator engine provided to vCenter. It was rebranded from VSO to VCO to vCenter orchestrator, and it was for quite some time a part of bundled with vCenter. After some internal reorganizations, it came to us, so to say, and it became a very integral part of the product, and it allowed our clients to extend the product beyond its own capabilities by writing their own custom code. I guess that's all I had to say. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Marto, one technical question.
Yep.
Why did you guys decided to go with Java when you rewrite everything from scratch? Was it like based on a knowledge you have with the language, or?
Yeah, well, to be fair, I wasn't there when that decision was taken. I was still a very junior developer at that point in time, but my guess would be yes, because of the knowledge we had, even though the Dynamic Ops product was at the core of VRA. I think as a percentage of the code, it was like 20 or 30%. So most of our code was written in Java. Most of the team was fluent in Java. We wanted to use Spring also. I think everyone had quite some experience with Spring. Also, at that point, VMware still hadn't sold off Pivotal, so Spring was also kind of our thing. And yeah, I think it was just more natural for the team to really write the product in Java.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, guys, if you don't have any more questions, I guess that's it from me. I'd like to thank all of you for coming to this presentation today. And I also want to thank my team, who I've been working with for the past 6 years. Yeah, once again, thank you for joining.